and 4-year-olds in preschool, which is a fall from 28th in the nation back in 2008. We know that for the last decade, the total number of Kentucky 3 and 4-year-olds in preschool is flatlined at around half. Again, mixed delivery will help to ensure that greater access is possible. And in the fall of 2020, only 53% of Kentucky's public school kindergartners were identified as kindergarten ready on the grant screener. So again, mixed delivery will help in that early education preparation. And when it comes to the economy here, it's also important to remember that in Kentucky, lack of available early care and education access results in over $573 million in lost earnings, business productivity, and tax revenue. Next, what are some pitfalls to avoid in preschool expansion? So I have a video that I will not be able to show due to technical abilities, but I'll do a good job explaining it. I will say that when this PowerPoint is uploaded, you will have the ability to click on the link. It'll be a live link, and I highly encourage you to watch it as it does a great job explaining. But if we take a look at where just a full-scale expansion of the public preschool system has happened in other states, it's not fared well for a number of reasons. Perhaps most comparable to Kentucky is Tulsa, Oklahoma. In Tulsa, rather than going with mixed delivery, they opted not for that. They opted for a simple expansion of the public school system. We saw there that cost for early care and education for that 0 through 3 population increased 33% overall from 2008 to 2018, with spikes of up to 55% in increased cost for infant and toddler care. Why is that? It's important to note that if you opt not for mixed delivery, you will take those 3 and 4-year-old children into the public system, which will then create a weaker market for childcare in particular. That will, we know unequivocally from these examples, crash that private childcare market. And I know that we think economically, but we also think in what's in the best interest for children. Well, if we crash that private childcare market and you have an infant, where will you find care? What about the care and the early education of that infant, that 1-year-old, that 2-year-old, not yet 3 or 4? It's important to preserve that option for those children as well. We also have examples from both California, where California saw the number of home-based or family child care providers decrease almost 30% from 08 to 16 due to not going with mixed delivery. And finally, in New York City, a model that's often touted as the model for a full-scale expansion of the public school system, they saw a 20% reduction in available infant and toddler care, and all the slots that were lost were found to be in high poverty areas. And this is all data from the Early Care and Education Consortium. So it's important to remember that we want to expand access for young children. We want all young children to be successful. We want all young children to have access to preschool. But it's not as simple as it may otherwise seem. And it's important that we go about this in the best way possible at a policy level. And that best possible way, the opinion of the Pritchard Committee, and I think you'll find from others today, is via a mixed delivery system. So, if we go ahead here, what are some model states Kentucky can emulate? And I want to preface this with, we know that no 2 states in the Union are alike. Every state is different. So here are some states that we thought might work well in Kentucky. You'll notice demographically, geographically, economically, many of them are similar to our state. The Commonwealth of Virginia, West Virginia, Alabama, South Carolina, Maryland, and maybe not so close to us, but a good model nonetheless, New Mexico. And these are just some states that are using mixed delivery across the United States. One example that we would like to highlight today is from our sister state, not too far away, just over in West Virginia. West Virginia has an excellent mixed delivery system that, again, while you can't exactly transfer everything from West Virginia into Kentucky, it's a good model for us to look to and learn from. So with that, I would like to welcome Janet Bachhaker from West Virginia to share her presentation with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to do a sound check real quick. Can you hear me? All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Benjamin, if you will release the screen, then I will share. It's not letting me share the screen.
Janet, I have your title up now, and I can share for you if you'd like to start.
That'd be great. Can you hear me well?
We can, yes.
Okay. So you could share my presentation.
Janet, you're breaking
That
up
would be
just
great.
a
I can't get it.
You're breaking up just a bit. If you can turn your video off, that might help.
So it seems that she's dropped off the call. It seems like we might be still having some technical difficulties. Oh, she's back again. So it's too much drama. Yeah, let's go ahead. Dr. Stevenson and Dr. Vanover, we'll go ahead and kick it to you all. And then when Ms. Bachhaker can join us again, we'll go ahead and include her. So, Dr. Stevenson?
So again, I'm Whitney Stevenson. I'm with the, I may need some help with this because do we need to go ahead and get out of Zoom or just leave it? Sorry, I'm Dr. Whitney Stevenson. I'm the Director of Early Childhood with Fayette County Public Schools, and that what comes with that title is also I'm the state-funded preschool coordinator for the district as well. And I'm not tech savvy, so thank you very much for this assistance. So I am here today to talk about the mixed delivery model that we currently have in Fayette County. We actually have had some partnerships that go back many years. Thank you very much. So I know time is limited, so I will jump right into the PowerPoint. So, but just for you to have a little bit of background about Fayette County, I just thought I would just give a quick overview of the preschool, the current state-funded preschool structure. So for our staffing in our classrooms, we have 1 lead teacher and 2 paraeducators per classroom. We have a ratio of 3 adults to 15 children. So last spring, our board approved a 5-year preschool plan, and that included limiting our class sizes to 15, which as I show some numbers through here based on the needs that we have, that is significant for us to ensure high quality education for the students that attend our program. Locations, we have 30 locations, and those include the 2 programs that I'll share today, specifically UK and Family Care Center. We have 45 classrooms, and that includes a remote learning classroom that we have this year, which is a KDE pilot. We signed a contract with them last year to do a pilot last year and this year. And then we have 81 sessions. So that's a combination of our AM and PM sessions that we have, and we do have 6 full-day sessions, and 5 of those are our Head Start Partnership classrooms, and then 1 is a preschool partnership grant that we receive to expand services to children, and that includes our remote learning classroom. Our current Fayette County numbers, I did these on September 20th. We currently are serving 904 children. Our December 1 count last year was 856. So you can see that we are going back to pre-COVID numbers. We are definitely reaching more families, and more families are coming after COVID for our program. In the number last year for December 1, 463 of those had disabilities, and 393 qualified by income. And so of those 463, 150 of those students were in the category of severe. So those are children with autism, traumatic brain injury, FMD, functional mental disability. So those are, students. So we had 150 of those students in our classrooms that we served. And in order to be able to make sure that we meet everyone's needs to the maximum ability is one of the reasons why we went to 15 children capacity in our classrooms. So for state-funded preschool in Fayette County, our mixed delivery model includes a partnership with Family Care Center. So Family Care Center is an entity of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government. If you've never visited there, I highly encourage, Sarah shaking her head. It's a unique building in and of itself, but the services that it provides are phenomenal. They have a child care program that serves children 6 weeks through 5 years old. They have a high school parent education program. They have a hands home visit program, and then they have an on-site pediatric health clinic. So we have a classroom at the Family Care Center amongst all of that great stuff going on. And so the partnership with Fayette County, that classroom started in 1992. So we have been there and partnered with them for a very long time. Family Care Center completes a yearly partnership application with KDE. Once KDE gives the approval, then there's a contract between us and Family Care Center. They have a 5-star rating. They're COA accredited. And for them, that's the Council on Accreditation, and that's a accreditation through Human Services Agency, because that's what the purpose of Family Care Center is as a human service agency. We have one Fayette County classroom there. It's on site, and so we have an AM and PM session, and the staffing is provided by Fayette County, so we have a lead teacher and 2 paraeducators. And so what I call share children, so it's kind of what you were referring to. We have some children that are bused to the facility, but we also have children that attend a child care program on site there at Family Care Center. And then at this facility, there's a bathroom that sets right. So they just walk through the bathroom and they're in their new class. So we do have that capacity to share children, and it has been a really great ongoing partnership that we've had with Family Care Center. The other partnership that we have is with the University of Kentucky Early Childhood Lab. And so this is located on the University of Kentucky's campus. They have a child care program that serves children 6 weeks through 5 years old. They're also a teacher training site, and they provide a research site for child development and early childhood education. So our partnership with them, it was established in 1995. Again, like Family Care Center, they complete a yearly application with KDE. They have a 5-star rating. They're NAUYC accredited. That is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. So there's different models of serving children there. So I put that in here because prior to COVID, we had a Fayette County on-site classroom there, and we provided the staff. Some years, depending on the need and the space that they need, the children would attend a half day. We did have a full day, but then they could attend the afternoon as wraparound care at the lab school. The past couple of years with COVID and the space that the lab school is needed just for their own capacity, we've actually contracted with them to provide services on site. So the teachers there have the same qualifications our public school teachers have, the IECE, the Interdisciplinary Early Childhood Education Certification, and they provide the services, and then Fayette County pays them to provide those services. We push in related service therapists to go in and provide those supports for the children that qualify. Our private child care program partnerships. So this will look a little bit different, but this is our licensed center-based care and family care homes. So we currently partner with 40 child care programs to share about 200 children. So that is children that attend child care, and then their parents choose to apply or come send them to state-funded preschool, either with a disability or based on income, and then they go back and forth between the programs. It's parent choice. We have, our numbers are up. We partner with 40 child care programs to do that. We have child care programs that seek us out to help us provide that information to their families to be able to come to our program. We have also visited child care programs to provide support for individual children, and we have professional learning opportunities that include early childhood educators from private child care and state-funded preschool. So we do blended professional learning activities for all early childhood professionals in Fayette County. Head Start. So we partner with Community Action Council, Head Start. So that's early Head Start and prep academies are the services that they offer. And then our partnership with them, we complete a yearly full utilization that is a requirement from KDE. We complete yearly contracts with them for blended and partnership classrooms. And so blended classrooms are where they provide us staff to put in those classrooms, and then the partnership classrooms are where they pay us to serve children. Those are full-day classrooms, and we have to, whatever program, whether state-funded or Head Start, has the highest standard, if that's the right way to say it, we have to follow that standard. So we have to work closely with them to ensure that we're following the Head Start model or the requirements there as well as the KDE requirements. We have shared community advertisement. We have flyers that have both state-funded and Head Start information on it, so we can make sure that we're touching as many families as we can. We do reciprocal referrals. We have a family that call and maybe they don't qualify for our program, it doesn't meet their needs, we will refer them to Head Start and vice versa. Head Start will send families to us based on having conversations with families and what their needs are. And then we have special education partnerships where Fayette County, we have a speech therapist that will go out and do speech screenings in the Head Start, community, direct managed sites and their child care partnership sites. Last year, that person screened over 1,000 children in Fayette County between a first and second referral, and this is them going into the child care programs and doing this. And then I have any questions. I wasn't sure if we would do questions now or at the end, but
we're going to wait until everyone
okay,
presents on this little section, and then we'll do it. And I think, am I correct that West Virginia's back on? Oh, we've lost her again.
Yes, but I will say I have talked through the presentation with Janet, and I'm happy to share a few of those slides.
Yeah.
We can get her to provide some written testimony as well, and of course you all have access to her slides.
That would be great. And then after that, I would like you to quickly talk about the Owensboro partnership. I think that's a real great opportunity to share that at this time.
Yes.
And then we'll head over to you, Dr. Vanover.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. So I should move to the main chair now, correct? Yeah. Okay, great.
and thank you all for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson.
Thank you so much. Again, I am not Janet Bachhaker, so I will share just a few screens to give you really the meat of the presentation and to underscore some very important pieces of West Virginia's policy and how they might be important here in Kentucky. So I'm going to skip through a few things here. First and foremost, one of the reasons why I was so intrigued by West Virginia's model is the governance model. When we talk about mixed delivery preschool and expanding public preschool throughout the state on a voluntary basis, it's important that all parts of the early childhood sector have a co-equal seat at the table. So one of the things I love about West Virginia's model is that it embodies the best of local collaboration and local control paired with effective and efficient and collaborative state oversight. So if you take a look across West Virginia's approximately 52 counties, I believe, every local county in West Virginia has this local collaborative where the pre-K coordinator, a special education representative, a child care, or what would be our Cabinet for Health and Family Services branch here in Kentucky, have a representative as well as a Head Start representative. So they ensure, as my colleague from Fayette County Public Schools shared, that all parts of these policy angles are being followed and that funding is being braided and blended appropriately and most effectively for the benefit of children. Also to ensure, again, that these are treated as co-equal members of a team working to expand access to preschool services for children. This image here, I think, gives you a pretty good overview of what that collaboration looks like, inclusive of faith-based programs as well, Head Start, classroom teachers, birth to 3, and also local boards of ed. I really wanted to hit home that collaborative nature, but it's also important here to note that at the state level, it is a co-equal partnership between the West Virginia Department of Education and, even though the name is different in West Virginia, their version of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. So it truly is a partnership at the local level and at the state level to ensure an effective and appropriate, a high-quality public-private partnership. One other thing that I'll note from Ms. Bachhaker's presentation is that this model works in rural as well as urban areas, including in areas where there may be limited childcare access. And I can share more about that here in just a few as well. The only thing that I'll add from her presentation is that in West Virginia, this was a multi-year process. It really took over about a decade and some change to grow that access and to ensure that all of the counties had those co-equal seats at that table. Now, the one thing that I'll share aside from Janet's presentation, if I can get back to mine here, okay. If I could have some help sharing the screen, I would appreciate it. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you so much. That one there, yes. Okay. One item that I wanted to take an opportunity to highlight with the committee today is an initiative that is being led by the Public Life Foundation of Owensboro, locally in Owensboro, Kentucky. When we talk about how important local collaboration is to something like mixed delivery, communities like Owensboro are the gold standard in our state for showing how local collaboration in early childhood education is possible. I'm holding up, and I have some copies for the committee as well, the executive summary of the Greater Owensboro Partnership for Early Development. What this is a hyper-local initiative throughout Owensboro, Davis County, to show that innovation in the early childhood space at the local level is possible, and that a local community can come together and effectively and efficiently leverage those local resources to solve many of child care's most pressing problems. The committee is made up of over 40 individuals that represent the faith-based sector, the nonprofit sector, the government sector, the private company sector, the Chamber of Commerce, every major institution that really goes to make the city and the community of Owensboro and Davis County, the city and the community of Owensboro and Davis County. But it's also inclusive of, as I like to say, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, every member of that community that goes to make that community work. So with this, I certainly encourage you to investigate more deeply their work and their 6 recommendations that they will actionize over the course of the next 5 to 6 years to ensure that in Owensboro, Davis County, every child has access to high-quality early education. So that's a little teaser, and I look forward to sharing more information with you regarding this initiative as time goes on. You'll be pleased to know that that concludes my part of the presentation, so hopefully no more jostling between Zoom and PowerPoints. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Benjamin. Dr. Vanover? If anyone has any good song suggestions, we'll take those.
I appreciate the continued conversation on the requirements of mixed delivery. You've heard about different options for preschool in Kentucky. We've talked about Head Start and Early Head Start, which serves children 0 to 5 and focuses on serving children in poverty. We've seen public school preschool, which main driving point is to serve children with disabilities, and then also children at low income. And then childcare, which is the private sector. One of the things that public preschool really corners the market on is supporting children with disabilities. Childcare and even Head Start programs really don't have the access to provide those needs. So mixing our delivery can really provide a wealth of resources to children and families throughout the community. And as a parent of a child with autism, to me, it's very important that we make sure we have resources for everyone. Now, the trick about doing this is we can't just put money from all three organizations into one bucket, shake it up, and say, okay, now we're going to fund these new programs. The funding process is very specific, and we want to make sure that in order for Kentucky to consider this, that we are thinking about it both at the micro level, where Dr. Stevenson talked about how in Fayette County the Family Care Center is getting these multiple funds, and then they have to make sure that they're attributed to the right source. But also at the macro level, if we think about doing this at the state level and having a mixed delivery model, how do we make sure that the funds are taken from each stream and used accurately? So we start off talking about Head Start. Again, Head Start is 3 to 5-year-olds, and Early Head Start is 0 to 3. Most of those slots are for children whose families are at the federal poverty level or below, but they do save some slots for children with disabilities. That money comes directly from the federal government to the local grantee, so to our community action councils, to a public school district who might house it there. The state has no bypass of that money. And really what we want to see, the federal government provides half-day care for those children. And usually in Kentucky, Head Start and Early Head Start partner either with a child care program, so they become a licensed child care program that also gets the federal funding, or they're housed in a public school and they have a partnership with the public school district. But blending those programs allows for the Head Start resources. And let me tell you, Head Start does some of the best wraparound services. They provide diapers and formula. They do parent GED programs, all kinds of things to make sure families are cared for when they have young children. So when we blend Head Start in, they offer those family resources to lots of different families. Now, in the same way, the public school system, you can qualify starting at 3, and that's for 3-year-olds with disabilities. And then when we get to 4, it's children with disabilities or children in a low-income level. And so, like Head Start focuses on poverty, public school is going to focus on children with disabilities. Right now, Kentucky says that if you have a child who qualifies for public school preschool, you have to find them a spot. Even if every classroom you have in the district is full, you have to come up with it. So resources can be slim sometimes if a school district has a large amount of enrollment. If Dr. Stevenson suddenly had 25 more children apply, then she has to come up with another classroom somewhere because those children have to have a spot. And we have only half-day services in many counties, mostly because of facility issues and staffing issues. If we have to have 81 programs during the day but only 40 classrooms, then the way to resolve that is to split those into 3-hour sessions. Now, private child care receives federal funds that pass through the state, but it primarily focuses on children in subsidy. Out of the 158,000 slots for child care in the state of Kentucky right now, 17% of those families receive some kind of child care subsidy. 83% of those slots are paid for by the parents. So it's still a major responsibility on the family. Parents have the ability to choose wherever they want to enroll their children with private child care if they can find a spot, but they may have limited access within their community. And then we have to think about child care regulations are less stringent than Head Start and public school preschool. Head Start and public school preschool both have higher requirements for their teaching staff. They may have more stringent curriculum requirements or special education support. And so child care is more flexible as far as how the owner or the board can distribute that program, but sometimes blending makes it a little more complicated. But private childcare also usually happens full day, and that's what many of our working families need. And many of our Head Start programs and and public school preschool programs don't offer that hours of operation, particularly nights and weekends. So when we're thinking about blending, we have to take all those considerations into effect and think, how do we get these together in order to make it okay to blend so that we don't jeopardize our funds? As Dr. Stevenson said, the highest set of standards wins. So if you've blended a child care program and a public school preschool classroom, then the whole classroom has to operate by the standards of the public school classroom, and that includes the teaching staff. In a public school preschool classroom, not only does the teacher have to have a 4-year degree, but also a teacher's certificate in an interdisciplinary early childhood ed with a background in special ed as well. Child care doesn't have those requirements in most settings, but we do have high quality programs that meet a lot of those needs. But to be an assistant teacher in public school preschool, you would need a CDA, which is equivalent to 2 college classes as a child development associate. So many times we blend where the lead teacher is the certified teacher and the assistant teachers from the child care program, or we find ways to work in those differences to still meet the requirements and not jeopardize the funding. Other things that we have to think about with blended programs is we have to meet minimal health and safety across the board, but then different types of programs have different types of accreditation. Dr. Stevenson mentioned NACE accreditation, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. Also, public school preschools in the state of Kentucky start off at a 3-star level on our 1 to 5-star scale. They already have a higher level of accreditation because of many of the policies that they have in place. So if a child care program blends with them, they have to meet that minimum level of the 3-star standard. We have other requirements like assessing children, which is great because Kentucky needs more children to be assessed developmentally at a young age to provide them those supports. But if child care programs aren't doing that, then when they blend, they have to learn new procedures and make sure that they're in alignment with what the public school or what Head Start requires. The special education piece, again, those referrals for special education, that's a huge portion that child care programs are lacking. And Head Start serves children with disabilities, public school preschool does. Head Start has a policy that no child can be expelled from their program. If you're getting federal funds, a child in Head Start may not be expelled. Child care is an industry that children get expelled 4 times more often than the K through 12 public school system, just because many child care programs don't have the resources to support a child with special needs. So when the blending occurs, we have to bring everything up to the highest standard in order to make sure that the funding remains. The biggest part is the finances, though. At the micro level, whoever is doing the books for the Family Care Center has to designate these funds came from Head Start and they were used for these children for this half-day program. These funds came from public school preschool and they were used for these children and this staff member for this half-day program. And then child care funding can be supported for the rest, but it also currently it can only go to children who are in a low-income variable. So we have to make sure that the funding streams do not cross. When they don't match during the audit process, that can cause us to lose child care block grant development funds at the state level, or the Head Start grantee can lose their federal funds through Head Start if the funding for blended programs is not used accurately. And so that's a really key piece that the administration has to keep in mind as they designate, we're going to do this statewide and expand mixed delivery, but in order to support everyone, we have to make sure that we have people in charge that know the regulation requirements and know the financial piece very well in order to split those funds out to make sure that the money goes to the specific purposes. And then there's a lot of accountability that goes into place. Child care programs are audited once a year at a minimum. Complaints could lead to additional investigations. The public school system has its own accountability branch where assessments are done. Everybody in the state utilizes the early childhood rating scales, whether it's an infant toddler classroom, preschool classroom, or an after-school classroom. But Head Start has additional assessments that they use that are very complicated for their classroom assessment tools. So all of this comes into play when we're making sure that accountability is in place, whether it's with the program quality or whether it's with the funding bodies. So in order to have mixed delivery, which benefits all these families and children, it has to be done in compliance with multiple funding streams, and we have to meet the highest requirements of all. However, in the end, as has been mentioned, families benefit from having high quality care for full day services. Children with disabilities benefit because they're in a day-long care where they can get the supports of the public school system but still have the extended care hours that they need. And Head Start often shares supports with families as well as the children enrolled in the program. The community benefits as the whole as long as the program is administered correctly. And then, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to hear them.
Quickly, I would like to recognize Senator Schroeder. Senator Schroeder, if you could just say that you're here, we'll get you listed on for roll call.
I am present. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Schroeder. Okay, I believe Senator Thomas has some questions. I'm going to do it without any charge.
You know, Madam Chair, you are quickly becoming one of my favorite chairpersons in the legislature.
I am honored.
You know that, don't you? I said one of them. I didn't say the favorite, Senator Carroll. I said one of them. Okay. Dr. Stevenson, first, it's good to see you again.
You too. Thank
Okay.
you for having me.
I just want to be clear on one thing. What Fayette County is doing now is limited by students in low-income families or by students with disability now. When you talk about the 904 students that you're offering, they have to qualify either in one or two categories, right?
Yes, sir.
If they don't qualify currently, Fayette County, through the Family Resource Center, which I've been over several times, and the UK lab, Early Child Lab, which I visited with Dr. Heilig, you don't have any students that aren't within those two categories, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the children served at those two locations
Okay.
fall in those categories.
Well, Dr. Stevenson, you should know that every time I poll the people in Fayette County about early child education, I do this every year before the session, my numbers come back with about 77% of Fayette County saying they support universal pre-K. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I get, about 77%. So since we're a testimony-taking body here, I want to know what your views on that are for those middle-class families who don't get advantage of that. You know, because as we know, the wealthy are going to pay to have their 3- and 4-year-olds, go to all the elite early child schools in the city, and I'm not going to mention them by name, so I'm going to miss one. I'm not going to do that. And the low-income families through Head Start, and I'm going to be with Dr. Price tomorrow, can take advantage of. It's the middle income, our middle income, that's harmed by what we see now here in Kentucky. So what's your view on that?
So, there's always been a conversation in early childhood about universal preschool. And then I think last year from the federal and the state perspectives, the governmental perspectives, a lot of conversation came up. And I do think that there is a place for universal preschool if parents choose to. I don't think it is mandatory. I think it's voluntary. And if a family wants to choose, then as a community, as a county, as a state, then we have to figure out how to do that within, our communities and what that looks like. But I do think there is a place for that if a family does want to send, their child, that we have the opportunity for that. But I think it's through these conversations, I think there's a lot of moving parts that have to be considered. But I do think a voluntary program like that would benefit the families of Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Vanover, my question to you, and first of all, I want to say you gave me a reading assignment for this meeting that I want to say I greatly appreciate it. brought me back to my college days. Just for the record, since we're taking notes here, Dr. Vanover has written a book, an excellent book, by the way, on America's child care crisis. I would encourage all to read that book. It's very enlightening for us as we take an in-depth look, a very surgical look at the child care industry here in Kentucky. So I want to applaud you for your book. I've read that. My question to you is this, Dr. Vanover. We really are facing a conundrum. Going back to my Senate colleague, I want to say Danny, but going back to my Senate colleague, he mentioned this morning that we do have a situation where that if we just go and just try to do what New York and California did, we will crush the child care industry because their business model is such that they really make their money by having 4 and 5 year olds in their school because of the ratios and the faculty. And we have to have daycare for working families. We just have to have that for our society. And the child care industry is critical. It's a critical sector to that. At the same time, as you just heard me talk with Dr. Stevenson, there's a strong desire by at least certain parts of the state, particularly where I'm from, that middle-class families ought to be able to send their children to preschool without any cost at all. Strong desire for that. And the numbers indicate that students that do that really do see a benefit from that. In fact, you cite 2 in your book. One, they come to kindergarten with a greater readiness than those that haven't had any preschool. And 2, with English language learners, they're able to get off the English language learner path sooner than those that don't come to preschool. So again, I would like to know your thoughts on what's the best way to marry the two so that we keep the child care industry in place, because we need that for our workforce, and for people who want to work and build their careers, they can do that. Yet at the same time, offer preschool to middle-class families at no cost.
Well, just like the model that Dr. Stevenson talked about, now Fayette County is only utilizing this for children that qualify due to low income or disability, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. So if you say in a public school, we might assign a price tag to each student's tuition each year. Each school is awarded $9,000 per child, or whatever the estimate is by the SEEK formula, things like that. Assuming you partner with a child care program, then the classroom at the child care that has the 4-year-olds that are all attending, they would get that SEEK number. They would get that number of $9,000 per child. In that way, to have that high quality classroom at the facility, the child care program would get the funding to continue to operate as long as they meet the standards in the contract with the public school system. And the child care program could continue to operate because, as you said earlier, the 3 and 4-year-olds is where child care providers make their money back. The ratios of adults to children are so low in the infant toddler classroom that they lose money. They have to have the slightly larger preschool classrooms in order to make that money back. If we don't take those away, if we have an assignment of a per child amount through the public school system for having that partnership classroom, then the child care program would still be able to function because they would still be getting a tuition per child. It would just come from the public school system instead of from the parents. And the infant toddler program would still be there to care for the children 0 to 3 that aren't yet old enough to participate in the 3 to 5-year-old classroom. That's the type of partnership that can ensure that child care would not collapse. Now, at the same time, not every child care program would want to participate. We have private schools throughout Kentucky that do not take state funds, and they operate solely on a tuition-based system. And they're a needed part of the community for families that want that type of option. Not every child care program would have to participate, but there are high-quality child care programs that could easily partner with the public school system and already easily do in some places with Head Start and public school preschool, could receive that per child amount and then continue to operate that way. Head Start already has a very effective model. They have early childhood partnerships and Head Start partnerships where they partner with a child care program. They give them a certain number of slots. You're going to have 20 preschool slots that are funded by Head Start. We pay for it. We'll come in and monitor to see how you meet our expectations. The children would not have to pay because they're Head Start qualifying and they live at the poverty level or below. But the funding goes to the center for that child's tuition just from Head Start, not from the family. And the center continues to prosper.
You might be my favorite committee member. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for the testimony. And Ben, I have to admit, this morning when you made the statement about public school classrooms going into private centers, I was totally lost by that comment, and that's never really been my understanding of a mixed model. Mixed model to me includes all the above, and you all have helped explain that and narrow that down a little bit further. And I'm trying to figure out the logistics of what this mixed model looks like for that subset of kids in that they need their day's going to be split. So it is putting a preschool classroom in a child care center. And I understand what you're saying about the SEEK dollars following that, but the teachers that would teach this would be paid at a teacher's salary, would get benefits just like other teachers, and I'm assuming that's if that is a state-funded child that qualifies on financial level, then that the pay and benefits, all that would come from the school system, from the state, correct?
That's how ours, when Family Care Center in UK, that's how those are run.
Okay, and so the center would get to keep all of the SEEK dollars, and how would that compare to tuition for a full classroom of preschool kids for the whole day? Because I guess you would have to convert at half a day. You would convert that preschool classroom into the center's child care room. This is just confusing. This has just floored me, and I apologize.
So you can double dip a little bit. A child who gets Head Start can also apply for Ccap. That's one of the great things about the partnership. So they get child care subsidy and Head Start funding. That's one of the great things about the partnership. So if a child were to get public school funding at a child care program that's licensed, the licensed program could still qualify for child care subsidy for that child as well. They may also qualify for other types of reimbursement. So in all ability, you could get multiple funding streams for that child to increase the quality of care. So currently for a child who has full day Head Start only pays for the half day. But then you apply for subsidy, you get the additional funding from the licensed child care for subsidy. You have two funding streams to cover the cost of care, and you can do a more robust curriculum and supports for that child. The same thing can happen at a licensed center that partners with public school preschool. So SEEK funds might be able to cover the 9 months, 7 hours a day. But the child could also, if they qualify for subsidy, could get that funding, particularly on a year-round basis or half day for extended care beyond that. And those funds can be utilized to supplement the program and supplement salaries as well.
And, other concerns that come about, and I know at our center, when I first arrived there, we had babies that were in early Head Start, and we had a contract with, I think, early Head Start out of Murray. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember a lot about that because I was still trying to figure out what I was doing at that point. But I see logistics with staff as a CEO of a nonprofit, me not having control of the classroom, of the staff. That makes me uncomfortable. Being responsible for those children, liability issues, responsible for that. how is that addressed in Lexington or?
So different states do this different ways. If you think about an early Head Start partnership like you were just talking about, Head Start gives the funds to the center for a certain number of slots, but the employees belong to the child care partnership site. They select the employees. They just have to meet a minimum level of education in order to be employees for that program. And they have some staffing requirements, like no matter how many children are there, 2 adults are always in the classroom with the children at the same time, which is a Head Start protocol that nobody else, child care doesn't always have 2 adults present. So you have to adhere to those little extras, but the funding per child comes to the child care program, and they make the staffing decisions. They make the HR decisions. They do a lot of that. They just get the extra resources from Head Start, the extra training, and the tuition money, basically, from that program. So if you're looking at a state compilation, if you wanted to do this at the macro level, you just would figure out how you want to run it. Do you want to run it so that the public school has the staff? Or do you run it so that the public school gives a per capita amount per child and then the child care program would do that? Or like Dr. Stevenson mentioned, do you have partnerships that are half and half and find transportation where you bus children to another part? That's still a partnership. It still provides full day. Might be a lot harder for kids who have transitions. My 9-year-old has autism, and transitioning in the middle of the day would be rough for him. But other kids wouldn't have as much of an issue. Other children might be like, I'm riding the yellow school bus. So you kind of figure out what works for the area that you're in. And not every single classroom may have the same setup. There would be some local decisions that would have to be made as long as the education was provided at a high quality level to the standards necessary.
And you all feel like through this model, it would be a better way that child care centers could sustain? I mean, it'd be more lucrative?
The necessary funding would be there to support child care programs to sustain. And I can tell you that programs that partner with Head Start or Early Head Start right now, I was the Early Head Start Partnership Coordinator for Fayette County when I worked at Community Action Council. And the programs that receive those extra funds, you know, they had supports for playground equipment they might not have had otherwise. They had supports for staffing, benefits, and training that they wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. With the Head Start requirements, children started getting more intricate lesson plans where they had individualized goals. That's not something child care typically does, but when they met the Head Start standards, then they started doing those developmental assessments and looking to see what's the next goal for each child and raising the quality of the education for each child in the classroom setting. So you see the benefits of those partnerships immediately, but you have to figure out how to help everybody get to the same common baseline.
Yeah, and Senator Carroll, if I may add, the model that I described in this morning's press conference is only one model. There are multiple different methods to go through this, and ultimately the method in which is ultimately decided upon will need to be decided based upon local communities and those local needs. Using that collaborative process from West Virginia that I elaborated on a little earlier. So I just want to make that very clear that just for clarity's sake this morning, that's kind of a simple way of thinking about it. That's one way that it can be done. That is certainly not the only way in which it can be accomplished.
Can I add for Fayette County when we're talking about the hiring piece? When we hire our staff for those classrooms at Family Care Center in UK, they are at the table with us during the interview to see like who would be a good fit for their program as they know their full program. So we do include them in those interviews in that hiring practice. And I also want to say, I know there was some conversation about SEEK funding and preschool dollars. Preschool is not included in the SEEK funding. We have separate per pupil amounts that are provided to us. So it's a separate funding source than SEEK funding. So I just wanted to get that out there because I have heard SEEK funding used a couple of times.
Yeah. Representative Raymond.
Thank you. I think universal pre-K polls really well because families can't understand that. We can't understand this, right? Families can't understand this. They're like, I want a place close to my house that's affordable, that's high quality, that'll take care of my kids all day, right? And universal pre-K, and I use this language to mean a place that's close to your house, that's affordable, that provides high quality care, that gets your kids ready for kindergarten, right? And it can look a lot of different ways. So I was going to bring up that preschool students are not covered in SEEK. I understand we're using that just as a way to talk about what if there's a dollar amount that follows a child. So my biggest question was, should preschool students be in SEEK?
That one's over my pay grade. That's totally on Department of Ed. The idea, though, is that each child in the program has kind of a cost attached to them for a year of care that would be high quality. And I use SEEK as a K through 12 example, but whatever the cost is that would be high quality care for that child would follow them. And you have to determine, you could have universal pre-K in the state and it'd still only be 3 hours a day. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that you can do mixed model delivery and universal pre-K. It doesn't mean that it's automatically 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and, you know, in all these different places. You kind of have to figure out what the community needs by a needs assessment, how many families need it, and what their needs really are. How many children have disabilities? That affects how many kids you can have in a classroom and how many classrooms you would have. So there's a lot of factors that you determine before you say, hey, we're going to have a 7-hour classroom for every child in the city and we're going to have them at these places. What is overwhelming, though, is if you say the public school is going to do it all, how many new buildings would the public school have to buy? How much money would go to that just so that you would have space? How many more teachers would you need? I mean, I had a conversation with Dr. Stevenson at the end of last year where she was desperately trying to make sure that she had the staff for the classrooms that she has now. If we expand it to every 4-year-old, you know, what kind of teaching staff would we need? But there are already teachers out there doing an awesome job in different places. Can't we utilize that? What kind of transportation would the public school system have to provide if they were responsible for moving all these children around all day long? And that's where it's a burden on the public school system to do it solely on the public school system. It's also a burden on childcare if they lose all their 3 and 4-year-olds and can't financially
When
be
I'm talking about
sustained.
bringing 3 and 4-year-olds potentially into SEEK, SEEK can leave the public school system. You know, you're talking about funding can go from a public school system to a private entity, and SEEK could be the same situation. I'm asking Dr. Stevenson because I know that SEEK provides a guaranteed amount versus the preschool block grant where you get a varying amount every year. And can that affect the quality that a child is receiving each year when you don't know if next year there's been lead in the water and you have so many more children who are going to have special needs and you actually receive less money than you did the year before?
Yes. Oh, I was going to say, go ahead.
Jumping in, I'm Mandy Simpson with Metro United Way, Chief Policy Officer, to respond to the question about SEEK. I do think there are a few considerations, and I'm not the expert in this space, but do want to raise when we consider bringing our preschool, our public preschool children into SEEK. One is that they would certainly need an add-on because the cost of caring for 3 and 4-year-olds is significantly more than the cost of caring through children who are in kindergarten through 12th grades, especially with student-to-teacher ratios, the additional environmental and facility considerations for caring for children that young. So a straight SEEK formula would need to be tailored with the additional resources required to care for children of that age. The other thing that I would mention is that the SEEK formulas are given to schools to administer, so we'd want to make sure that all the resources that are currently completely dedicated to our preschool students continue to make it to the youngest learners in our public school settings. And we also want to acknowledge that preschool, even in public school settings, is often most powerfully delivered in a center-based setting rather than as an individual classroom in a K through 8 or K through 5 school. So we would still want to encourage school district ability to have early care and education centers fully dedicated to preschool. The other is the way average daily attendance is used as a SEEK calculation. We'd want to make sure that we use a formula for our youngest learners consistent with how their enrollment tracks throughout the year and really capture what that maximum enrollment would be so that it would be the resources needed to predict in the current year and in proceeding years what would really be needed for preschool enrollment.
So she captured pretty much what I was going to share. So
I know, and I
No.
didn't mean to take us into the weeds of SEEK.
Thank you. That was one question I didn't anticipate.
I'm raising the possibility of a dedicated, guaranteed funding amount that follows a child, which is a popular idea in some other educational concepts here in the legislature. I wanted to ask about pay equity. What are challenges involved when a child spends part of their day with an educator who makes $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000, and the second half of the day with an educator who ostensibly has the same job and is making $9 or $10 or $11 an hour? Is there a morale issue there, a competition issue? Would you talk about that?
So for the history of Fayette County, back when state funded was started in Fayette County, the teachers teaching in the public school program were not paid as the certified teachers K through 12. And they have teacher certifications, they've gone to school. And so from that lens, that became a concern and an issue for, I mean, teachers, they're coming to school, they're doing the same thing, they have the same responsibilities. So for the school system, I mean, these are certified teachers who've gone to college that they are teachers like K through 12. So we had to compensate them in that way. And I think, in the child care program, based on, the hourly wage or what they generate for tuition kind of drives what they can pay. I do think, we hear people say, well, you make a lot more in state funded. And then the answer is yes. But we also look through the lens because they're a public school employee that has a teacher certification, and they're just like K through 12 teachers. So that's kind of the lens in the conversation that we have that conversation with, if that makes sense. But we do hear that, and I know Sarah shook her head as well. But for us from public school, that's the lens that we look at our staff, because that's the qualifications that they have.
With staffing and pay equity, you have to think child care providers typically make the lowest amount. And then great child care teachers often get snatched by Head Start because they make more than child care. And then great Head Start teachers usually get snatched by public school preschool because they make the highest rate. And as you continue your education, you often see this progression where they move from child care to Head Start to public school preschool. There is a great difference in equity. From national research through NAUSC, we see average public school preschool teacher is around the $50,000 mark, and then average for child care providers in Kentucky, we talked about this morning, is around $22,600. And there's a great feeling of disrespect or a lack of appreciation when you know that you do a similar job and you make less than half of that. However, we've talked a great deal during the task force that the greatest need we have in childcare right now is increase in workforce development and wages. If we focus a lot on increasing the wage, do some type of wage supplement, find a way to attract people to the field with a more stable wage and benefits, then we're going to be able to work towards decreasing that gap in disparity for pay between the two entities. And ultimately, the partnership is going to be stronger when the pay equity is within a closer proximity.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, Ben, thanks
Josie, I'm sorry.
It's a super quick one.
As long as it's a super short answer.
Thanks for bringing the West Virginia example. I wish we could have heard from Janet. So this presentation was about how it works. I would love for you to send us some mind-blowing statistics on how implemented the program. It has changed the face of West Virginia. Undeniable statistics that we just are going to have to act on.
I will most certainly get those to you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next presentation, Childcare Opportunities and Challenges in Rural Communities. If there are members that still had questions, I invite the table guests to stay for after the meeting. But if Miss Debbie Link and Becky Stacy could come up here. And I'm going to apologize. I've got to leave at 4:30, which was kind of the thought of the 30 minutes each. But you know what? We've had some really great conversations. So Co-Chair Carol will take over. I have to get back to my district for an event. As a reminder, we are here to serve the people the districts were elected to. So it's important for me to get myself back to the 18th district. Please introduce yourself for the records, and please excuse the slight interruption when Co-Chair Carol and I switch seats in a little bit. Thank you.
I'm Debbie Link with the Child Care Council of Kentucky.
I'm Becky Stacy. I am the Executive Director of the Appalachian Early Childhood Network.
And I'm not sure how to pull up my PowerPoint from here, if someone could help. Good afternoon. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the landscape of family child care. My name is Debbie Link, and I'm the Executive Director of the Child Care Council of Kentucky. The Child Care Council is a resource and referral agency that serves the early childhood community in central Kentucky. We offer professional development, technical assistance, and advocacy to child care programs, businesses, and community partners in our region. Our strategy is to gather, grow, and go with our network by actively engaging in early childhood advocacy to ensure that regulations and policies in Kentucky positively impact children, families, and the early care and education workforce. The Child Care Council's mission statement is to serve as a visible community resource committed to offering access to affordable, quality care and education. And our vision is to promote, expand, and enhance services that improve the quality of life for all children, families, and early care professionals in the Bluegrass. The Child Care Council of Kentucky is one of 5 resource and referral agencies across the state that participate in the Family Child Care Network. The network was formed in July of 2021. The Family Child Care Network of Kentucky recruits and supports in-home care, families, and communities to increase and sustain access to quality early learning experiences. There are 4 types of child care in Kentucky. A licensed Type 1 child care facility is a facility licensed to care for 4 or more children in a non-residential setting. A licensed Type 2 family child care home is a child care program in the home of a primary licensee and typically cares for 7 to 12 children, including those related to the licensee. In a certified family child care home, the provider cares for up to 10 children, including those related to the provider in his or her own home. A registered family child care provider could be a family member, a friend, a neighbor who cares for up to 3 children in the provider's home or in the home of the child. I'm going to focus on Type 2 and certified family child care homes. Estimates from the early 2000s note that Kentucky had a record amount of family child care providers with over 1,200 certified and Type 2 homes. Currently, we have 241 certified and Type 2 homes and 163 potential providers. Since January 1st, the Family Child Care Network have 3,745 points of contact with these potential providers. There are many benefits of choosing a certified or Type 2 family child care home. They are licensed and offer quality and safe learning environments. They have lower teacher-child ratios. There is a choice of curriculum. They can choose a provider that meets their culture, background, and values. They are sustainable in rural areas where Type 1 centers may not be. Siblings can attend together and benefit from mixed age group learning. The providers are trained educators. Some have the availability of non-traditional hours to meet the needs of second, third, and weekend shift workers. And lastly, these providers have the support of the Family Child Care Network. As you can see, we have a concentration of family child care homes near Louisville in the central part of the state. This map shows the need for more providers in the eastern and western parts of the states where child care deserts exist. Some of the contributing factors to the decline in the child care industry include the increased cost of meeting the minimum requirements for certification, the increase in local municipalities implementing zoning restrictions on home businesses, and the decrease in funding for the Child Care Assistance Program. Regulation itself is not the challenge. It's support for implementation and consideration of the unique family child care home setting that is. National survey response data from state licensing agencies reported by the Federal Office of Child Care confirms Kentucky's downward trend, showing that more than 97,000 licensed family child care homes in the United States closed between 2005 and 2017. The drop in the number of family child care providers can be a hardship for families, especially parents who work non-traditional hours, live in rural communities, have infants and toddlers, or they don't speak English as their primary language. Low-income families and vulnerable populations may be most affected by the lack of available family child care. Families may choose family child care because it better fits their preference for care in a home-like setting that meets their cultures, backgrounds, and values. Families with lower incomes, families needing care for infants and toddlers, and families who are Hispanic or African American are more likely to use family child care than center-based care. As our colleagues have stated, the wages of early childhood providers are low. This child care industry was fragile long before the onset of the pandemic due to low wages, staff turnover, and limited investments in child care centers. In most family child care homes, the teacher, who is also the administrator, making from $5.50 an hour, well below minimum wage, to $22.10 an hour, with a median income of $27,560. The Child Care Assistance Program provides financial assistance to at-risk families when the adults are full-time students or work a minimum of 20 hours per week. Currently, families at 85% of the state median income can qualify for the Child Care Assistance Program. Prior to the pandemic, families qualified at 160% of the federal poverty level. Child care assistance in Kentucky was based on the market rate of the child care in the county and the age of the child. We would like a cost study to be considered to determine the reimbursement rates. Currently, the Ccap program covers the cost of 80% of the child care programs in Kentucky. Prior to the pandemic, Ccap covered the full cost of only 40% of the child care programs. With the increasing cost of goods and services, in order to sustain their business, they have had to raise tuition rates. In doing this, it has increased the copay amounts that parents are responsible for, compounding their need for additional income. We need your support. We're asking that you help us strengthen the Family Child Care Network by sustaining funds and creating additional investments. We are asking for the continuation of startup funds. There have been 18 family child care homes that have qualified for this grant to date. Sustain investment in Ccap reimbursement rates, eligibility, and transition periods. Currently, the Ccap reimbursement rate is based on a market rate survey in each county. Again, we would like for this to move to a cost study to determine the reimbursement rate. Encourage competitive wages, benefits, and educational opportunities for early care and education professionals. For child care centers to pay their staff a livable wage, they must charge families a rate that they just can't afford. We need centers to be able to access funds that would offset the cost and enable them to hire and retain quality staff. This affects the entire workforce. Without stable child care, there cannot be a stable workforce. Recommend studying local planning and zoning restrictions and fees. There is a great disparity in zoning across the state, which often creates a barrier for opening a family child care home. This cost varies from $25 to $500, depending on which county they're in. And to support the successful implementation of House Bill 499, which incentivizes employers to contribute to the child care costs of their employees. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I'm going to give it over to Becky Stacy to talk more about the importance of family child care providers in rural communities. Let's see if we can.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you about the work that we are doing in Appalachian, Kentucky. My name is Becky Stacy. I'm the director of the Appalachian Early Childhood Network. We're based in Hazard. We do have a training facility in Middlesboro, and we are working to open a new training facility in Moorhead, Kentucky. I'm a retired kindergarten teacher with the public school system in Perry County. And so today I wanted to share with you and reiterate some of the things that Debbie said about the Family Child Care Network and how we are looking to solve some of the problems that we see in the Commonwealth with child care. So our mission is we work to build an environment that supports quality, affordable early care and education for families in Appalachia. Our vision is that families in Appalachia will have access to quality, affordable early care and education that leads all children to reaching their fullest potential. We are part of the Family Child Care Network that was recently formed. The Appalachian Early Childhood Network covers the yellow counties that you see on the map. Altogether, that is 46 counties, and in those 46 counties, we have 42 family child care homes. That doesn't include child care centers or Head Start. But in some of those counties, especially in eastern Kentucky, we have no child care to speak of. Family child care centers. The only option parents have is when their children are old enough to start Head Start or preschool. So we feel like one of our solutions is to look at family child care homes as being vital to the child care industry. Debbie mentioned a lot of the reasons that parents might flock toward family child care homes. One is the child caregiver ratio. There's a very low child turnover. Many families that start their child in a family child care home as an infant will leave that child in that home until they start kindergarten. It's more convenient for parents, especially in our area, because it's very rural, and so parents don't always go to the city where the child care homes are. They can drop them off as they're going to work in their neighborhood. The atmosphere, the parent can choose what kind of family child care home, what kind of culture they want, and they can pick that for themselves. Non-traditional hours are a big draw for our families, and plus it brings new businesses into our community, and we really work hard with our family child care providers so that they see themselves as a business person, as owning a business. And also, as mentioned earlier, parents want something that's close to home, and it's quality, and it's all day, and a family child care home can provide that. So I wanted to, as I said, I'm a retired kindergarten teacher and a storyteller. In fact, for 27 years, I was a storyteller, a mom, a dad, a grandma, a grandpa, an entertainer, a dancer, a singer. I did all those things. And so especially the past month and a half in eastern Kentucky, one of the things we've had to do is really listen to our families and what they're going through. So I wanted to share with you a quote from one of our parents when we shared a family child care home on our Facebook page. She said, "Marcia's the best. Both my children loved her. They learned so much under her, as well as being well cared for and loved." And she had 2 children who started as infants and stayed with Marcia Bradley in Moorhead, Kentucky, stayed with Marcia until they started kindergarten. Marcia has been a certified family child care home provider since 2005. This is Teresa Russell, who is in Manchester, Kentucky. We helped her get started in 2020. This is our newest family child care provider, Katie Donner in Somerset, Kentucky. She opened just a few months ago. She has 20 years of experience in child care. She's a Vermont transplant. Always wanted to own her own business, but wasn't sure where to start. So the Family Child Care Network was able to support her in that venture. I do want to share some of our family child care homes. As you can see, this is Marcia Bradley's home, but it looks like a classroom. She has it set up like a classroom for her children. And so there's learning going on there. It's not just babysitting. This is our Katie, and these are homemade musical instruments, making music after they made the instruments. This is our Manchester provider, and this family actually, with their children, they plant and harvest and clean and cook and eat their foods together at the family child care home. In fact, if you look in the back there, he's using hydroponics to grow some of his vegetables. So we're very proud of that provider. This is a provider in northern Kentucky who we did the Very Hungry Caterpillar, if you're familiar with the story. And afterwards, she did some training, and we were able to provide her with a little caterpillar for her children, for outside play. And again, this is the family setting of sitting down and saying, we grew this food, we cleaned this food, we cooked this food together, and then we sit down and ate it as a family. Outdoor play, one of the big things we're looking at is making sure everything's developmentally appropriate in our family child care homes. We are doing lots of outdoor learning with our providers. And as you can see, of course, those little ones love that kind of thing. So then I wanted to kind of talk about what's happening in eastern Kentucky right now. This is a quote from a Facebook conversation that I saw. This was a parent that I know, and she said, all daycares are booked in Hazard, just my luck. I swear I can't win for losing. And she has probably a 6-month-old. And so a friend of hers said, I've been trying for 2 years to get mine in. Now, Perry County has about 7 child care centers and 2 family child care homes, and we're still having this problem. So I wanted to talk about some of the barriers, especially in our area. First of all, Ccap reimbursement rates. Some counties are receiving about $20 less per child than other areas, especially in eastern Kentucky. Economically, lots of people in eastern Kentucky don't have the capital to open a new business in a rural community. Geographically, you see your centers in the larger cities, not in the rural areas. We have basically no public transportation. And I've also had parents tell me that the mileage to and from a child care is just a hardship for many families. And sometimes it's a choice between child care and working. So of course, we've talked about today the workforce barriers, the staff shortages, compensation for child care providers versus the education that we see being required and the classes that they have to take, and then lack of business training for potential providers, which Family Child Care Network is working on right now. So I wanted to end, again, I said that I'm a storyteller, so if I may, this one will be quick. Because we're in a small county and because I taught for so many years, I know basically everybody. I taught basically everybody and their children. And so a couple of weeks ago after the flood, a friend called me. She just knew me because I was a teacher. And she said that she had lost her husband in the flood. She needed childcare. She was struggling to find it, so I told her I would help her. Even though I already knew the answer, there were no spots available. So yesterday she called me back and she said, I've had to put in my 2 weeks notice. Now she's an RN. She was working at one of our local schools. She has a 9-week-old and a 4-year-old, and she's having to leave the workforce because before she lost her husband, they kind of did a patchwork. The husband helped, the mom helped, the grandmother helped. Now she has to go back to work and she doesn't have that backup plan, I guess. So she had to give her 2 weeks notice. Someone who said she had worked since 16, someone who had worked her way through school, who had become an RN, is leaving the workforce because she just doesn't have childcare. And that's not even looking at quality and those things. It's just looking at there's no spots right now. So what we're looking at, along with the other agencies, is bringing more family childcare into our area. And so I also wanted to say that when we look at statistics and when we look at data, I'm a data person, but we also have to remember those faces and those voices from our area. And I do also believe that this committee wouldn't exist unless you already believe in those voices and those faces. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for your presentation. I really do appreciate the recommendations. And there's going to come a point that's going to be where we are, and we're going to have to look at those recommendations and then start formatting policy to make those things happen. And I think you all have been very specific. Are there other policy issues, statutory issues that we need to look at that are, and an example is the zoning ordinance. We passed a bill last session to loosen that up to some extent. Are there any other things similar to that you all are aware of that would foster growth of these providers?
Zoning was not such an issue in our area, but I
Yeah.
believe it was with you.
In a few areas, but most of them, in Lexington, it was $25. So it's not, in the city, it's not so bad. But when you do go out in the rural communities, it becomes a barrier.
Well, what we passed, if I remember correctly, it allowed local governments to look at a family home provider as a separate entity. And
Right.
so, if they were looking to get their license in a residential area, that they could be considered, and, couldn't another business couldn't come in and do it. They could look at them differently. So
Yeah.
those are the types of things that and we have talked quite a bit about the support to help not just the in-home providers, but centers to have support to walk them through the process and stay with them so it's not so overwhelming for them. So I could see that being an aspect of the policy that we format. And I know support is there now, but to expand that, and I see that being as a large component also. Any of the members have questions? Go ahead.
What's the average startup cost for a family child care home?
I would say it varies depending on the area. We have been able to offer $2,500 startup grants. Which,
And that'll get them what they need in your area?
No.
Probably not. No. But that's what we've been able to offer so far, just through grants and those kinds of things. And then we are, part of the problem, I don't know if you have, is that they don't see themselves as a business person. So we really, really have to say, these are the things we're going to have to do. Well, you're a caregiver. We already know that. That's what you want to do. But if this is going to be your career, we have to figure out, how to balance that. $2,500, probably no. I would have to guess it doesn't get them started.
Okay. Are they mostly acquiring the learning materials, or do they have to make adjustments?
We help as much as we
Structure.
can. One of the things we do is offer training, and if you take training, you can receive learning materials in that way. But a lot of them spend a lot out of their pocket. I have a provider who says she goes to, the Goodwill every weekend and that kind of thing. So they are providing a lot of their materials themselves.
The thing is, a lot of times they'll get materials that'll need to be replaced. So they'll get things to get them by, but they're not buying high quality because they can't afford them. So they're buying things that they can use, but they're not buying things that are going to last. So
And things
they're-
they can afford.
They're paying it again. The other thing, we were kind of looking into outdoor play, if we could have funding to help support that, whether it's fencing or something like that, because they do have to have a fence. It has to be a fenced area. So things like that, if we could support them in other ways. And outdoor learning is so important, if we could focus on more than just fencing, if it could be outdoor play structures or anything that's around safety, kind of thing. So we're appreciative of the startup grants for sure, and we would love to see those expanded. And, I think helping them get a strong start is going to help them stay in the industry long term instead of a turnover, of family child care homes as well.
And we do have lots of family child care home providers retiring and not people coming in to replace them. So that's a problem we have as well. And we'd like to be able to give them an incentive to open their own business.
The geographical nature of Eastern Kentucky, I'm assuming that really that is the best model compared to center and asking people to come in. An interesting conversation we had yesterday, we were talking about Medicaid. And in the Commonwealth, we have got to marry Medicaid, poverty, and economic development. And we have got to focus our efforts on economic development in those areas where our Medicaid population is, where our poverty is. And as part of doing that, and maybe in Eastern Kentucky, more of a mix to amid businesses and focusing on that, and having the pushing the model like Toyota's doing, like we've talked about with nursing homes. And I heard from the director of the Nursing Home Association, they're having that conversation. That's pretty exciting. Think about a nursing home with a child care center attached. Think about all the advantages to that for our seniors and for our kids. So things like that, and as we would work to develop Eastern Kentucky in these rural areas, child care being a part of the businesses that are there. So I think there are a lot of outside the box ways to address it, and we can solve so many problems by focusing on those areas with high Medicaid rates, with high poverty rates throughout the Commonwealth, and as a result, education's going to get better. People are going to want to move back to these areas. So I see a lot of advantages to that. Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Carroll. And Representative Raymond really took my question. I would say this, Ms. Stacy. I think it's incumbent upon us to eliminate that problem of barriers to entry. We've got to find ways to finance these child care homes so they can exist. Because here's what's going on when you say that. When you make that comment, you're saying there are people out there who want to provide daycare for individuals. That's what you're saying. Okay, they just can't do it because they don't have the capital to do so. Okay, so in Eastern Kentucky, that's something that we've got to eliminate. So I want you to talk with Debbie and ask Debbie about some suggestions about grants or other opportunities. But that's a problem that we should eliminate. So that those who want to open up family care homes can do so, and then we can have more and more high quality, affordable daycare for Eastern Kentucky. And so Debbie, you and Ms. Stacy work together on that. Come up with some ideas, pass it on to Chairman Carroll, and we can eliminate that problem.
Thank you.
So last week I kind of played off my co-chair's idea, and we had a round table at home with some of our providers, and we got into the discussion, and it boils down to what are these providers, what are they making, and what is a fair wage for a child care facility owner, an in-home provider? What's a fair wage from them? And I think we've kind of determined that before we really look at the fiscal part of this and what assistance we're going to provide. And I asked a couple of the providers, I think it made them a little uncomfortable, but I think $50,000 to $70,000 would be nice, and so I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere that we have to gauge by as we move forward that will provide the incentives for centers and for all the types of providers that we need. And that's what's going to be so difficult to come to, is finding that number and finding the dollars to do that. I'm hopeful that the federal government's going to ante up some long-term support, and I think the state is also willing to do so. We see the importance, but as I've said this morning, we've really got to think outside the box and create new avenues to provide these services to support all the things that we need to support. And first and foremost, that we didn't talk a lot about this morning, the advantages to the kids, because the kids being in an educational environment from birth on, they're gonna succeed more in life, and they're gonna advance further and quicker, and we're all gonna be better off for that. Senator Thomas, do you have a follow-up, sir?
No, I'm going to agree with you, Senator Carroll. I'm not shy about speaking my mind, and I'm going to say they should make at least $15 an hour. That's my position. That your average child care worker ought to make $15 an hour. That's my position.
If I may, it's a little hard for family child care providers because you put that dollar amount on there, but they may be open from 6 to 6. They may be open from 6 to 8 o'clock or on the weekends. So it does that's a challenge for them to really come up to be able to articulate what it would cost, because, the ones that say $5.50 an hour, they may be open for, 60 hours a week. And that's what's driving that number so low. So, again, like Becky said, they have to think of themselves as business people, and they have, times they're open and times they're closed, so they can protect that.
Do you all find that most are maximizing the number of kids they can have? And I know some do it because they want to be home with their kids and it's a way they can make some money. And I get that. But in general, are they maximizing the number of kids?
I think so.
But I don't know about in your area, but in my area, I've actually had providers say, wait, I'm supposed to pay myself a salary. You know, I don't even think it's become such a thing of, I hesitate to say almost martyrdom. You know, if you're going to care for children, you're not going to make any money, you know, which nobody's trying to get rich. They want to do it because they want to do it. But they don't realize if this is going to be your career, we've got to figure out a way to keep you up and running.
Do you feel like a marketing campaign, and especially in the eastern part of the state, would that help to let people know, hey, this is out there, there's help to be had to set this up, and what impact do you think that would be? And Sarah, if you got any follow-up on this, please. If you all want to answer first.
I do think so. We've talked the Child Care Council. We've kind of thrown that around. I think a marketing campaign in itself, not only more on the impact that you make in a life, you know, across their whole life. You know, you really start building that foundation, and to recruit people, because right now our industry is so depleted with workers. You know, we need new people in, and as we were saying, it's an aging issue. Our providers are aging out. You know, they're getting older and they're retiring, and then we don't have the new people to replace them because they can make the same amount of money at a fast food place. So we need to really change that, you know, so that it is meaningful work and they are getting compensated for that.
We've seen other states that have done more extensive marketing to enhance family child care homes to join the field. This past year, Kentucky was the first state to set up the Family Child Care Network. But Connecticut was the second. They followed right behind us, and they had done more advanced marketing on come to the field and did some statewide pushes. There's other things that we've seen that have helped enhance. So Becky talked about they don't pay themselves a wage, and some of that is business, and some of it is I paid all my bills, I'm going to take what's left over. Wait, this week it was only $20. But there are several states who have specifically set up subsidy and different programs to say this is the wage that family child care providers should start off attempting to make. Setting up your books, you're going to pay yourself this much an hour. And when they've done that, those states have been a little more successful. I know that New Mexico, Colorado, some of the states in that area have set that up to say this is the wage family child care providers should make. And then they've been more able to attract providers because they know, hey, I'm going to make that when it's over. Because beforehand, when you're launching into this new business, if you don't have any idea that you're going to make enough to sustain your living, it's less appealing.
And I will say that one of our marketing campaigns right now is we have partnered with our local technical community college to go into their classrooms for the early childhood classes to speak to them about a career path in family child care. And since we're opening a new office in Moorhead, we're looking at being on the Moorhead campus and saying this is opportunity. This may be something you want to look at.
Okay.
And if a family child care home is certified or licensed, then they could potentially have practicum students come and observe them in either the associate degree programs or at the university level. So that partnership could also attract new people coming into the field because, again, it is an aging population. Many of these women, I only say women because we have no men doing this in Kentucky, but these women have been doing this for an entire career and they're retiring. But many of the new child care providers, like when I taught at Eastern Kentucky University to the early childhood population, they didn't really know this was an option. They'd never seen anybody do it. So if you can get students out to see what some of this looks like, it could also be a marketing opportunity for the career field.
Okay. We haven't had a chance to do this through other meetings, and it was the intent from the beginning. Is there anyone else here today that has something they would like to come on up?
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. Please introduce yourself for the record. You have the floor.
Now can you hear me? You can. Hi, I'm Amy Neal. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood. So I'll just make a couple points. First, thank you for your leadership. And just as I was listening today, Representative Raymond, you weren't trying to make a joke, but you were hilarious when you said the language, right? The language we use, it's so confusing. So if it's so confusing for us in the room, how confusing is it for families and parents and other partners? So it's just, birth to 5 doesn't have a system, right? K to 12 has a system, and birth to 5, there's no system. So that's really important, and that's part of the problem. So children are born, and then 5 years later, they show up for kindergarten. And what's critical is that they have high quality experiences, whether that's in childcare, whether that's at home, whether that's in public pre-K, whether that's in Head Start or early Head Start. What we want is for Kentucky to be the best place to have a child and to raise a child, right? But so it's interesting because today we talked about the best practice of mixed delivery, and it is a best practice, and we should do more and more and more of it. And unfortunately, I had to miss the last meeting, but Amy Smith presented, and that's exactly what she talked about, was mixed delivery, but that's not what she called it. She called it, I don't know, I think she called it blending and braiding funding or something. I don't know. Ben did a great job today. He also called it public-private funding, right? So, the point I'm trying to make is there's great stuff going on here in Kentucky, and we heard that today. And so I would just encourage us also to really do that landscape analysis of, and we heard from Fayette County, phenomenal work, who's doing the work really well, and how might we lift that up and do more of it and stop doing what's not working. And then to Dr. Vandover's point, who is such an expert in everything early childhood, she talked about pulling down all of those dollars, which are critical, federal, state, local, philanthropic, because the only way we're going to do this right is collectively and rowing in the same direction. So I just thank you all for your leadership, and just to sort of recognize how complex all of this work is, and to recognize all the experts that are in this room, obviously, but so much great work going on in the Commonwealth. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Appreciate all you do with the council and all your hard work, and I apologize for not making many of those meetings anymore. Great meeting today. I wish we could stay 2 more hours, but I'm not going to push my luck on that. I would ask Ben, Sarah, Jennifer, if you all could hang around. I want to talk some more about this mixed model and make sure I understand this completely before we leave. I think it's a very important tool. And in closing, I want to just follow up a little bit on what co-chair said at the beginning of the meeting. There is no piece of legislation that I am aware of, and I can't speak for every member on this task force, that has anything to do with universal public pre-K, taking all the pre-K students out of child care centers. I don't support that personally, and I want to make that very clear. And but again, I can't speak for any other member, but I'm not aware of anything. And I think there has been some unfortunate false information that has been passed around, and it has created a lot of animosity and bad feelings, and it's very disappointing. And I would ask if there are providers watching this, take that information you get with a grain of salt, and please check it out before you send messages that you may regret later. And if you'll just follow these meetings, you'll see what we're doing, and we're being very open about it. And I think we have someone who has a personal agenda that's trying to impact this meeting, and that's very unfortunate. But those efforts are not going to happen. We're going to move forward. We're going to follow the course, and we're going to focus on what we need to be doing. And all the providers that are out there that have input, after seeing any of the meetings that you feel like is important to what we're talking about, please make sure we get that information so we can consider it. This has got to be a partnership. We've got to have everybody on board to solve these problems. We don't have time to be bickering amongst each other. We've got to move forward. So enough said, and I'm not going to bring that up again, but thank you all so much for being here for the testimony. Our next meeting is October the 20th at 3 p.m., and hope you all can make it. And again, anyone out there watching, if you have any comments about today's meeting and input, please make sure that we get that. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. We stand adjourned.